You are sitting across from your boss on a Monday morning. The meeting is about Q3 numbers, unit projections, head count, the usual. You have a coffee in front of you that has gone cold. The presentation is on a screen to your right. And somewhere in the middle of slide 7, you have a thought that catches you completely off guard. You do not have to be here in a year. Not because you are quitting without a plan, not because you have an inheritance coming, not because something truly dramatic happened, because you have been doing a very specific kind of math quietly, methodically for the past several years, and the math says you are almost done. That is what FIRE looks like from the inside. Financial independence, retire early. And if you have never looked into it seriously, or you looked into it once and wrote it off as something for people who earn more than you, this video is worth your full attention. Because the number one reason most people dismiss FIRE is that they confuse it with frugality, with eating rice and cutting coffee. That is not what it is. It is a math framework, a clean, testable, historically grounded set of calculations, and the math is significantly simpler than almost anyone makes it sound. My name is Jack. I am 56 years old. I did not retire at 40, but I have spent years watching the people who did and the people who tried and came up short, and the difference between them is not income. It is not luck. It is whether they understood a few specific numbers and acted on them early enough. If you want that picture clearly, hit subscribe. If this changes what you think your money is actually capable of, that is what this channel exists to do. Quick note, I am not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. These are real numbers, real research, and my own perspective. What you do with it is your call. Let's start from the beginning. Where FIRE came from, the idea that you do not have to work until 65 is not new, but it became a movement in stages. The intellectual foundation came from a book published in 1992 called Your Money or Your Life, written by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez. The central argument was simple and radical. Your time has a finite supply, and every hour you spend earning money past the point of necessity is an hour you are spending, not saving. The book introduced the concept of a crossover point, the moment when your passive investment income exceeds your monthly expenses and work becomes optional. It was ahead of its time by about 2 decades. The math that made the idea usable came later. In 1994, a financial planner named William Bengen published research in the Journal of Financial Planning asking one specific question: what is the maximum withdrawal rate from a retirement portfolio that has historically survived every bad 30-year period in US markets? His answer was 4%. That is the origin of the 4% rule. Not a guess, not a convention, but an empirical finding built on decades of historical market data. In 1998, a team of researchers at Trinity University ran extended simulations confirming and refining the finding. That paper, Retirement Savings, Choosing a Withdrawal Rate that is Sustainable, became known simply as the Trinity Study, and its conclusions have been cited, debated, and refined by researchers continuously in the decades since. Those 2 pieces of research are the mathematical foundation. Everything else in FIRE builds on them. The math, your number. The 4% rule means something simple in reverse. If you can withdraw 4% of a portfolio per year and the portfolio holds, then you need 25 times your annual spending to be financially independent. 25 times your annual expenses, that is the FIRE number. If you spend $40,000 a year, your FIRE number is $1 million. If you spend $60,000 a year, it is $1.5 million. If you spend $80,000 a year, it is $2 million. If you spend $100,000 a year, it is $2.5 million. The number scales directly with what your life costs, not with what you earn, not with how long you have been working. This is where most people get FIRE completely wrong. They calculate how much they earn and assume that income is the primary variable. It is not. Your income determines how fast you accumulate. Your spending determines the size of the target. Your savings rate, the gap between the two, determines the timeline. A person earning $200,000 who spends $190,000 is further from FIRE than a person earning $70,000 who spends $35,000. The math does not care what you make. It cares about the gap. The savings rate is the only real lever. Here is the clearest version of the core math. A person saving 10% of their income will need approximately 40 years of work before reaching financial independence. That is the traditional model compressed into an equation. A person saving 25% needs roughly 32 years. A person saving 50%, spending exactly half of what they make, needs approximately 17 years. A person saving 75% of their income needs approximately 7 years of full-time work. 7 years. Not a fantasy, not a trick. The math on this has been documented by multiple researchers and writers over the past 2 decades. Pete Adney, writing under the name Mr. Money Mustache, published a post in 2012 called "The Shockingly Simple Math Behind Early Retirement" that has since been read by millions of people. It is called shockingly simple because the math genuinely is. Here's why the savings rate is so powerful, specifically. Every dollar you choose not to spend does 2 things simultaneously. It adds $1 to your accumulation pile, and it reduces the size of the pile you ultimately need because your FIRE number is 25 times your annual spending, and your annual spending just went down by $1. One decision, 2 effects running in parallel. That is why the gap between a 10% saver and a 50% saver is not a gap of a few years. It is a gap of more than 2 decades of working life. If you earn $75,000 a year and spend $37,500, a 50% savings rate, your FIRE number is $37,500 multiplied by 25, which is $937,500. A reachable number on a salary that is well within the range most people actually earn. At that savings rate, 17 years of consistent investing gets you there. Start at 25 and you're looking at your last required year of work at 42. Now run the same person at a 20% savings rate, same income, same market returns, but now they are spending $60,000 a year. Their FIRE number is 1.5 million, and the timeline stretches to approximately 32 years. Same person, different gap between income and spending, different life trajectory. The 4 versions. The FIRE movement has developed 4 distinct variations, and which one is relevant depends on what kind of retirement you are actually building toward. Lean FIRE means targeting a very low annual spend in retirement, typically under $40,000 per year, and reaching financial independence on a portfolio of $1 million or less. Lean FIRE requires a genuinely frugal lifestyle in retirement, no luxury expenses, no cushion for the unexpected. It works well for some people and is completely unsustainable for others. Fat FIRE is what most people actually want when they imagine early retirement done without compromise. Fat FIRE targets $100,000 or more in annual spending, which requires a portfolio of $2.5 million or more. The timeline to Fat FIRE is much longer, and it generally requires either a high income, an extended savings window, or both. Barista FIRE is the version that fits the broadest range of real situations. You reach partial financial independence, enough that your investment portfolio covers most of your expenses, and you keep some form of part-time work, not for the full income, but for the healthcare coverage, the social connection, or the modest amount of additional cash that closes the gap. The portfolio does the heavy lifting. You fill in what is left on your own terms. Coast FIRE is the concept that gets the least attention, but maybe the most powerful framing available to someone who is still mid-process. Coast FIRE means you have already invested enough that compound growth alone, without a single additional contribution, will grow your existing portfolio to your full FIRE number by traditional retirement age. At 30 years old, $200,000 invested at a 7% average annual return becomes approximately $2.1 million at age 65. That is Coast FIRE. You do not need to save aggressively anymore. You just need to cover your current living expenses and let time run its course. The risks nobody talks about clearly enough. Here is the version of FIRE that the movement tends to undersell. The Trinity study was designed around a 30-year retirement. If you retire at 40 and live to 90, that is a 50-year withdrawal window. The 4% rule's historical success rate drops when stretched from 30 years to 50. Many FIRE researchers now recommend targeting a 3% withdrawal rate for an early retirement, which means building 33 times your annual expenses, not 25. On a $60,000 spending level, that difference is $480,000 in additional savings required. That is not a rounding error. Healthcare is the most dangerous calculation in the entire framework for anyone retiring before 65. Medicare eligibility begins at 65. Before that, you are purchasing health insurance independently. In 2024, a comprehensive individual plan on the ACA marketplace runs anywhere from $500 to $1,200 per month, depending on your state, your age, and your income. A couple retiring at 40 could spend $15,000 to $24,000 per year on premiums alone, before a single deductible, copay, or unexpected medical event. If you have not included this number explicitly in your FIRE calculation, you have not actually completed your FIRE calculation. Sequence of returns risk is the third issue. If the market drops 40% in the first 2 years of your retirement, your portfolio shrinks before compound growth has had time to work in your favor. At that smaller balance, even a modest withdrawal rate is consuming a dangerous percentage of what remains. This is why most serious FIRE practitioners maintain a cash or bond buffer of 2 to 3 years of living expenses drawn down during market downturns, while the invested portfolio is left alone to recover. And then there is the question the FIRE community is increasingly honest about. What do you actually do at 40? The research on early and abrupt retirement is consistent. People who retire without structure, purpose, or identity outside of their working roles experience higher rates of depression, cognitive decline, and health deterioration than people who stay engaged in purposeful activity. This is not a fringe finding. It tracks across multiple longitudinal studies. The FIRE participants who report genuine satisfaction tend not to have stopped working entirely. They stopped doing work they did not choose. They built something new, a business, a creative practice, a consulting relationship, a volunteer commitment with real responsibility. The number gave them the choice. What they did with the choice determined whether they flourished or quietly fell apart. The honest version of the FIRE goal, for most people who actually reach it, is not zero work. It is zero mandatory work. That distinction matters more than the movement usually admits. The identity shift. Before you understand FIRE, your financial life runs in one direction. You earn, you spend, you earn more to afford more spending, and eventually enough time passes that you stop working because you have no other option. After you understand FIRE, your financial life has a shape, a specific, calculable, reachable number. And the way you look at every financial decision changes, not because you have become more frugal, but because the unit of measurement changed. You start measuring spending decisions in time instead of dollars. An extra $500 per month in spending is not just $500. At a $50,000 annual spending level and a $1.25 million FIRE number, that $500 per month raises your required portfolio by $150,000. Hidden inside one spending decision is a meaningful extension of your required working life. The people who actually reach FIRE are not the highest earners in the room. They are the ones who changed the unit of measurement and made every decision inside that new frame. 3 steps to start right now. Step 1, calculate your real annual spending. Not an estimate. Pull every bank and credit card statement from the last 12 months and add up the actual total. Then multiply by 25. That is your FIRE number. Write it down. The abstraction disappears the moment it becomes a specific, tangible number rather than a vague concept. Step 2, calculate your current savings rate. Add up everything you saved last year. Retirement contributions, brokerage contributions, any debt pay down above the required minimum. Divide by your gross income. Whatever percentage you get, look carefully at what that savings rate implies for your timeline. If you are at 10%, you are on a 40-year runway. If you want a different timeline, you need a different number. Step 3. Find one structural spending reduction this month. Not a habit, a structure, housing, vehicles, insurance. Subscription bundles you are overpaying for relative to the value you get. A $10,000 reduction in annual spending does two things simultaneously. It cuts your FIRE number by $250,000 and it increases your savings rate at the same time. Find one category. Act on it this month, not next month. FIRE is not for everyone. And you do not need to retire at 40 for this framework to matter. The math works exactly the same whether your target is 42 or 62. What changes is how much time you have to let it work. And time, as it turns out, runs in one direction. Drop your savings rate in the comments. I will tell you what the math says about where you are headed.